Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome author Karin to talk about her new book, the latest in the Will Trent series, After That Night. In After That Night, GBI investigator Will Trent and medical examiner Sarah Linton traces the fallout from a sexual assault. Now, in this episode, Karin and I talk about her new book, but we also talk about the development of the character Will Trent over the series, along with the characters from her other books. We also get a peek into Karin's writing process and how real-life experiences influence her writing. Plus, Karin also gives us some great book recommendations, and she shares tips on how to get back into reading and get out of those dreaded reading slumps. But before we get into the episode, please take a quick second and leave the podcast a 5-star rating and review, because it's a great way to show your support. It opens up new opportunities for the show, it helps me get great guests, it helps us to find new listeners, and it helps to keep me and the podcast going. So, thanks in advance, and now onto the episode with author Karin Slaughter. Hi readers, welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is a master storyteller known worldwide with numerous books that have been adapted to screen, as well as numerous series you might be familiar with. But she's here on the couch with me to talk about her latest novel, After That Night. Please welcome to the couch, Karin Slaughter. Hi, Karin.
Thank you. Thanks for making room on the couch.
Yeah, I'm glad you decided to join me. So I know this isn't your first rodeo, book 11 in the Will Trent series, plus again, you've written numerous books before, but how are you feeling about this one? How excited are you?
You know, I never have lost the excitement of it. I've been touring with it in Europe, and I was in Ireland in the UK, and of course it's out here now in the US, and it's been great having people who are longtime readers say, "Oh, I'm really enjoying it. It's something new and interesting from Sarah's perspective," and then having first-time readers who've never, really been into the series or whatever, say, "Wow, this makes me want to read more." So that just tells me I did my job right as a writer, that I've got people so excited about it.
Well, I think you did your job right, for sure. But I want readers to hear it straight from you before we kind of get into it a bit. Tell us about your book, After That Night. What's your elevator pitch, and what can readers expect when they pick up a copy?
Well, I'm really shitty at this elevator pitch stuff. I tend to ramble on, so prepare yourself. It's really a story about sexual assault. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a page turner, and I totally wrote it for entertainment. But if you want a deeper meaning, it's about something horrible that happens to a lot of women we know, and sometimes it happens to us, where a woman is sexually assaulted. And having written so many novels about this issue, I wanted to explore what happens after the assault, as in after that night, how it impacts in small and huge ways through the duration of a woman's life. So really, this is Sarah's story. But of course, Will Trent is there, and his partner Faith, and their boss Amanda. And what Sarah finds out in the opening of the book is that what happened to her 15 years ago might be connected to a patient she admits into the hospital as a doctor in present day, and the ramifications from that.
Absolutely. So I appreciated getting Sarah's point of view. I love that the focus was kind of on her. But again, it's a Will Trent novel, and I kind of want to go back to the beginning and then circle back. It's book 11, and the first question I know readers are going to have hearing that a book is a part of a series is, can it be read as a standalone? Now, I think it can be, but I want them to hear from the author. Can this book be read as a standalone? Can any of the Will Trent books be read as a standalone?
Absolutely. They're all written where you don't have to know anything that's happened before. I mean, hopefully you'll read it and you'll be like, crap, I got to go find out what everything that happened before this. But one of the great pleasures of writing a series is I get to pick and choose what I talk about in any one book. And I don't have to rely on the stuff that came before it, because I can just write this story like a book you just pick up and know nothing about and start reading and feel like you're being pulled into it. That being said, I'm a huge reader. I love reading series, and I'm a stickler to start from the beginning. But every series probably that I've ever enjoyed, I've read one out of order, and that's really gotten me hooked. And I've gone back and have to get the previous ones, because that's just how I roll. But anybody can pick this up and know exactly what's going on.
Yep, I feel the same way. I'll start at some random place and then I'll find myself going back to the beginning. And speaking of beginning, so I revisited Triptych early this year because Will Trent was coming on ABC. For some reason, I just wanted to kind of go back. When I did, I kind of was reminded that Will never had a primary or the dominant voice in that book in the beginning. He was kind of like laying low, and then he, kind of came out later. I kind of felt a similar vibe reading this because, again, indeed, it is Sarah's story. But I'm curious, in the beginning, did you know that Will Trent was going to be this main character, that you're going to write a series revolving around him?
And you're exactly right. In Triptych, I did it. It kind of plays into the narrative that you think it's about one person, but it's really not. It's about Will, and that's really his personality. He's a guy who likes to blend in. He's very introverted. He's a lot like me in some ways. If I go to a party, I'm always going to be in the corner petting the cat instead of out there talking to people. And I thought this is a good way to talk about how he is and who he is as a man, by this slow introduction through other people's eyes. And that's really how we meet people in real life. We come face to face with them. We don't know a lot about them. And so I wanted to layer in some of his past and history. And that was very deliberately done, because I knew that he had more books in him. I knew that he would have a couple of books before he met Sarah Linton, that his partnership with Faith would evolve, that he would learn more about his relationship with Amanda. So all of that was in my head when I sat down to write that first novel, which honestly, looking back, it was kind of arrogant to feel like, hey, yeah, I'm going to keep writing this series. Because it was only my, I think, seventh book. And so I just really felt like I knew where I wanted to go with him. And when I sat down and started writing, that was in my head, is not so much I've got to shoot my wad in this one opening scene so that people love Will Trent and want to read a series. I thought I need to make this book really twisty, turny, and different so that people want to know more about these characters.
Yeah, because he was really lying low, and I just kind of forgot that for a bit. So when I revisited it, it was just kind of like that little reminder. But I loved how you mentioned that you're the person at the party who is petting the cat. I'm petting the cat. I'm playing with the dogs. I actually gravitate towards children, and if there are none, then I'm reading my book. So I want to know, who is Will inspired by? Are there bits of you? Are there other people in real life? Or is it a combination of people? Tell me about real life and then your character Will Trent and how they collide.
I always think my characters are an amalgamation of me. So they have different parts of my personality and different part of my wishful thinking on my personality. One thing about Sarah is she's really tall and she's confident and she's a doctor. And so I really, when I'm writing Sarah, I'm mindful that a lot of my desires about who I want to be as a woman are put into her personality. And I'm definitely in Will. And Will has a very mechanical way of looking at things, which, much to the chagrin of my friends, I do that also. I'm more about, let's solve this problem rather than let's talk about it, which can be very annoying, I have been told repeatedly. And, Faith is that kind of pragmatic side of me where I just expect the worst in people. And Amanda's kind of the same way as that, but also Amanda can have a very biting sense of humor, and unfortunately I can too. She can get away with it a lot more than I can, though.
Right, right. Okay. Now I have to say, of your, because you have another series. That one is a Grant County series, but the one I have been following through and through is Will Trent. And you just shared some of the characters. We have Faith, that I've been a fan of. There's Will. We have Sarah, who's the main character in this novel. My question is, how are you able, in the case of this series, just showing us growth and evolution and just complexities with our main characters? Because again, yes, it's a Will Trent novel, but Sarah is at the center right here. We had one, I think, a while back, with Faith being a bit more front and center. How are you able to just kind of evolve these characters, these recurring characters in your books?
Well, I definitely feel like they're real people to me. I mean, I know they're fictional characters. I'm not crazy, but they feel like people I live with every single day of my life. And, I might hear a song, or I'm in traffic on the expressway, and I think a thought that Faith might think, so they're constantly with me. But it was very deliberate on my part way back into Grant County to make them change and grow with everything that happens to them. And that was one of my pet peeves as a person who loves reading not just crime novels, but crime series novels, was you'd meet the protagonist in book 4, and it's like they never saw a dead body before. And in the first 3 books, there was like murder everywhere. And so I understand how you arrive at that sort of writing as a writer, because it's a little easier. Because when I write about Will and Sarah, I have to be very mindful that this ain't their first rodeo, and I have to find where the tension comes from. In this case, it's very personal. So for Sarah's and Will's purposes, it's the fact that it feels very personal to them drives the narrative. But that's what the great joy of my life is, as far as being a writer, is finding those new and different things to say about these characters. And for instance, the Sarah Linton you meet in Grant County, which was several books ago, it has evolved through the series. She was very black and white in Blindsided. She was very conscious of this is right, this is wrong, and you're either on one side or the other. But the Sarah we meet in After That Night has been affected by these horrible things that have happened in my books. And she looks at the world in ways that it's gray rather than the black and white.
I think you excel at this because you are a reader, and I do have reader-like questions to ask you later on in the interview. But I think that's what I appreciate so much with these characters, is just like in real life, just like me, and I'm, just like you, I dare say, we are changed and affected by the things that happen in our day-to-day lives. So as we progress, our points of view change. Mine certainly have, and I love seeing that with the characters. So kind of on that note of real life, your books never shy away from, those situations that happen in the real world. They're very much rooted in reality. So how much of the real world and what is going on influences your writing? Because right now, me watching television, watching the news, seeing, for example, the Gilgo Beach murders, that's top of my mind. So I'm like, okay, some podcaster, true crime podcaster is going to pick this up, maybe an author. How much does the real life affect you or influence or inspire your writing?
I think at a very basic level, when I see something like Gilgo Beach, what it reminds me of is that the crimes that I write about happen to real people and real families, and that I always have to keep that front of mind. And to me, that's a key factor in not going beyond my where my moral compass points me as a writer, because I do take an unflinching look at crime. I'm not one of these authors who fades to black or soft pedals thing, I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. I think it's great. I love reading those kinds of books too. But in my own work, I want to show violence for what it is. It's not sexy. It's not fun. And as you see in the Gilgo Beach, or actually any murder, how it affects the family, how it affects the community, the police officers investigating it, who go home to their families. That's what's interesting to me, is how do you come back from this? How do you deal with this? And so when I'm writing my books, I am mindful of those things. I'm not a real ripped from the headlines kind of author. I don't try to catch trends or anything. But I definitely want to make sure that in my own work that I'm being respectful of the things that can happen to men and women out there.
Yeah, because your books really do reflect real life situations and circumstances and their real life families out there. So again, just another thing I appreciate with your work. Now, I want to get into your writing life a bit in terms of just how you keep it all together, because again, we're talking about the new Will Trent book, After That Night. It's book 11. You have the Grant County series, but you also have some great standalones. I mean, personal favorites, Pretty Girls, for sure. I love The Good Daughter. Pieces of Her, which is also now on Netflix. But more recently, and in my recent memory, False Witness and Girl Forgotten. I want to know, do you have like a calendar or something that helps guide you as to what you write next, what you do next? Because, you know, you have a series you have running. Is it time to write another Will Trent? Is it time for a standalone? How do you make these decisions, and what does your writing look like?
So I write what I want to write. And I think of all the things about being an author that make me very glad of this level of success I've had, I've been very fortunate, is that I'm in a position where I can write the book I want to write. And I don't have, and I've honestly never had an editor or a publisher say to me, well, you've got to write the series, you've got to write a standalone. And part of that, I think, is just very early on, I had friendships. I was very lucky to have friendships with authors. And Peter Robinson, who's was just an amazing writer and has written some beautiful crime novels, said to me, if you're writing a series, they say write a standalone. If you're writing a standalone, write a series, they meaning publishers. And the fact is, if you feel passionate about something, that's what you should write. And I've always felt very, very deep in my gut that that's what I should do. And the fact is, you're spending as a writer an entire year with a book. If you're not into it, if you're not loving it, then it's just not going to work well. And so when I write a Will and Sarah, it's when I feel like writing Will and Sarah and I have a good story for them. Or when I write a standalone, it's because I have this great idea and I've fleshed it out and I'm ready to do that. And I will say, anybody who doesn't believe me, look at the fact that ABC has just spent a gazillion dollars promoting the Will Trent television series. And I write a book in the Will Trent series where you get like a little bit of him in the first 50 pages, but really it opens with a character who's not even on the show, which is probably not the smartest idea if you want to build on that. I mean, Will definitely comes front and center later. But I think it's really just always been my process to write what I want to write and hope that people are happy.
So how about someone who discovered Will Trent through the ABC show and they're saying, wow, I want more. And then they see this latest Karin Slaughter After That Night, but it's centered with Sarah in the middle of it. I guess my question to you is, how do you feel as a writer watching your book on screen? Because I do think this is proof you write what you want to write, because Sarah is front and center and it's going to introduce them to this new character. So how do you take it as the writer? Because these are your people. I'm just enjoying them, but they're ultimately yours.
I always say the book is the book and the show is the show. And there are going to be people out there who don't want to do both. There are people going to be wanting to just watch the show and not care for the books or whatever. And that's fine. But for me, I'm super pleased with what they've done. I think Ramon Rodriguez is an amazing Will. Does he look like the Will I describe in the book? No, but he was raised by a single mom and some bossy older sisters, and he respects and listens to women, which is a big key factor for Will. He's just an amazingly sexy and smart guy, not just on screen, but you pick up that immediately in person. He has such charisma. So I'm really pleased, but it's an interpretation of the books. It's not a one for one. And let's be honest, the first time I read the pilot script, my note was Will talks too much, because in the book, you might get pages and pages of his thoughts and then he just says yes. And you can't do that on a show. You have to have him talking, you have to have him explaining himself and asking questions and blah, blah, blah. And so that to me was a real eye opener about the difference between telling and showing. You have to show on television. You have to have people moving around and doing things. And I think it's great what they've done. I couldn't be happier with it. And I hope people give it a chance. And I hope people who love the show give the books a chance.
I hope we give both of them a chance. But I know book people are notorious to say the book was better. I still stand on the book is better. But yes, it's two different things and we should take them as they are. But I'm curious, you've been writing for so many years. I love that you have the opportunity and you have the support to write what you want to write. But do you have any unpublished or half-finished books just lying in the drawer?
Not really. I mean, my first book is was not in the crime genre. That's how I got my agent, and no one wanted to publish it. And I might go back to that, or I might just say, when you write a book, you're at a certain point in your life, and that was the point at which I wanted to write that kind of story, and I'm at a different point now. So I think it's best to leave it in the drawer.
No, that sounds good. That sounds fine. Are you working on any other projects right now actively, or are you just focused on promoting After That Night?
I'm promoting After That Night. That's got my full attention. A lot of people don't realize that when books publish, the author's job doesn't start on the publication day. So I've been doing a lot of support, a lot of podcasts and things like that in anticipation of the publication. But once I get home, I'm going to take a week off just to relax. And then I'm back into writing the new Will and Sarah book that will be out next year. And this one it starts pretty heart poundingly. I think people are going to be really happy.
Would that be more of a Will book or a Sarah book?
You'd probably call it more of a Will book.
Okay.
So it's his time in the sunlight. But of course, Sarah and Faith and Amanda are there as well.
Yes. Okay, amazing. What's exciting you right now about your work? What is just giving you life?
The thought of starting a new book. I can't promise that I'll feel that way a week after I've started writing, because writing is actually a job. A lot of people don't understand that. Sitting down and figuring things out, the puzzle of a novel, that I still relish. I love doing it. I can't wait to get back and do it again.
What would you say is the most difficult part then of your process?
I think it's time. And I've had to be really greedy with my time because I could travel most of the year promoting my books, and then I wouldn't have any brain energy left to sit down and write. So I've had to be really careful about saying no to things and just making it clear that I've got to block out these months so that I can write the best story I can write.
So for an author I've been reading for many years and I've loved, and I am just so stoked I get to talk to you today. I'm really curious about success and what does that look like for you? Because, you've achieved the New York Times bestseller, translated numerous books, over 100 countries, I think, across the globe. I don't remember, but quite a bit. You have one book's on Netflix, the Will Trent series on ABC. I mean, do you remember, or can you think of a moment when you thought, okay, I've made it? But also, what does success look like for you?
Well, those are two different questions. I think for me, the hallmark was having made it was being able to only be a writer for my job. And I'm aware every day of how fortunate I am to do that, because the majority of writers cannot support themselves just by writing. They teach or they do other jobs, or they have a spouse who can support them, and they can't really just be self-sustaining as a writer. So to me, that moment was really pivotal. As far as success, though, I think everybody has a different definition of success. And I think as you reach goals, you have to realign what success is. So is it being a #1 New York Times bestseller? And then you get that, what's next? And for me, the definition of success is I get to keep writing the books that I want to write. And I still enjoy it. So that's a really big metric for me, is that every time I sit down, I'm really happy to be back into telling stories.
Oh, I love hearing that. Okay, one more thing on this kind of, I guess, topic or subject line. Looking back, what would you tell your younger writing self if you could tell her anything?
Gosh, I don't want to ruin it for her. I don't want to say, look, yeah, you're going to be successful. It's going to work for you. Because I think all those risks and even the bad times contributed to where I am now. And if I changed any of that, it might have this butterfly effect. But I think just as a woman, one thing I would tell myself as a young woman is to stop worrying so much about external things and focus on the things you can control.
Love that. Love that. Okay, I think part of the reason why I love your books is that you approach it a bit from a reader's point of view, because you're a reader. So I want to get into your reading life really quick. Tell me about the last book or books that you finished reading that you would now recommend.
Well, I've got a great one called One Blood by Deneen Milner that comes out in October. And it's just a really terrific read. It's not a thriller, but it reads like a little bit like a thriller. It's about her, a woman's life and the twists and turns that it takes. And Deneen is just a fantastic writer. So I'm super happy to have this book in my hands early. And I would encourage everyone out there to read it. I can't remember the title. I just recently finished a Steph Cha book. And it's not her latest one. I had started reading a couple of hers, and for some reason I got like sidetracked. And I went back to her again, and she's amazing. I love Alafair Burke. Anything she writes, I'm going to read. Kate White just had a new one that came out, I think last month or maybe a couple of months ago, that was fantastic. I'm just really drawn to people, authors who are writing stuff that they're still excited about. And everyone I mentioned, there's just so into being good writers.
What would you say was your favorite childhood book?
Oh, probably the Encyclopedia Brown ones. And looking back at them, like, of course, I was focused on his sidekick. I think her name was Ramona. God, I can't remember her name. And I was always pleased when she got to handle some of the crimes and solve some of the crimes. Very rarely Encyclopedia Brown would let her be the smart one. But I just love the puzzle of the books. And he was kind of like an encyclopedia himself, and sort of like a Sherlock Holmes, but in a boy frame. And I just loved reading them because I could figure out the mysteries along with them.
And what book would you say, or books, were formative to you as a writer? What were you reading that probably made you think, I want to do this, or a book that inspired you maybe?
I still read books that make me happy about doing this. Sally, sorry, that was Encyclopedia's sidekick, Sally. Ramona Beasley, I was thinking from a different series. But I read My Sister the Serial Killer a while back, and I was like, oh my God, this is so great and fresh and new. It makes me so excited about being a writer and doing something fresh and new. But when I was growing up, I think the most important writer I read was Flannery O'Connor. And the thing is, she was a woman living in a small South Georgia town, and people thought she was weird, and she wrote these fantastic stories. And this is why representation matters so much, because until I found her, I didn't know that was possible. Because I was weird and living in a South Georgia town and writing, not as good, of course, but writing my own short stories. And so reading her, I thought, wow, this could actually happen. This is something I could do for a living.
Right. Okay. So on the show, we have readers who sometimes fall into reading slumps, or we have folks who are trying to get back into reading. They've abandoned their books for some time, life happened, whatever it might be. What advice would you give to someone listening who wants to get back into reading, or they're currently in a slump?
I would say, don't read if you're in a slump, don't read what everybody else is reading. Just read something light and fun, and you don't have to work for it. Just something that makes you happy, that you've taken that time to tell yourself a good story. And anybody who can't make time, reading is so important for resetting your brain and just taking yourself out of all the stuff that's going on in the world. I mean, let's be honest, the world is pretty crappy right now with all the turmoil. So I would say the same thing. Just find a book you think is going to be fun, that you're going to enjoy. It doesn't have to be Proust, but just find something you're interested in, because reading is really a gift that you can give yourself.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Also on the show, we're a big fan of indie bookstores. So share with our listeners a favorite indie. It could be a childhood favorite. I know you're traveling. Just spread some indie love.
I love Foxtails in Woodstock, Georgia. They're one of my favorite bookstores. Poison Pen in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm going to be there. So, usually if you have a cool town, particularly if you've got people who are the kind of people that I like, readers who love cats and love sitting indoors on the couch all day, no matter how beautiful it is outside, there's going to be a nice independent bookstore around. So I would just tell them, there's all kinds of websites and you can find a place and just get lost in a store.
Absolutely. Now, you also run a nonprofit organization, Save the Libraries. We love indies. We also love libraries here. Tell listeners a bit about it if they're not familiar.
Save the Libraries has raised about $500,000 to date. And what we do is we encourage people to donate to their local libraries. We do block funding. We just do whatever we can to support librarians, particularly now when they're so beset upon by lunatics who want to tell them how to do their jobs and services their communities. And we just do whatever we can to help keep the doors open and keep people reading.
Absolutely. Have to love libraries and librarians. We appreciate them. Okay, kind of getting back to your book and kind of wrapping things together. Again, I know you've written the book After That Night. The Will Trent series is on ABC, so folks can read the book, watch the show, or do both. But what are you hoping readers might think or feel? What are you hoping for after they've turned the last page of After That Night?
I hope that what they get is that they've read a really gripping, good story and had lots of fun, and that they think about the characters long after the last page has been turned.
And if this is your first Will Trent, I hope you'll go back and read the others, because I'm a big fan of the series. Karin, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.